The University of the People. You may have seen adverts from this university that claims to be American-accredited and tuition-free. But is it real? Is it worth your while? Today, I'm going to do a review of the University of the People, and so if you're interested in pursuing a degree from that university, you might want to watch this video to the very end. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button so that you can get more of my content, because I post about education, I post content for people in the educational industry, I post to students, I post to people who are in business, and so you should subscribe to my channel. Okay, let's get started with the University of the People. First of all, is it real or is it a scam? Let me answer that question up front. The University of the People is very real. It is real, I know from experience, because I started a program at the University of the People. To the next question, should you pursue a degree there? Should you go to the University of the People? What exactly is it about? Well, that depends on you. The answer to that question is not going to be the same for everybody. I'm going to talk about factors that you should consider. I'll talk about the pros and I'll talk about the cons so that you can make up your mind and decide on whether it is for you. So let me get started by telling you that the University of the People is a fully online university, meaning that it doesn't really make use of physical buildings. It doesn't teach in a brick and mortar setting like what many of us are used to. The implication of that is students are from all over the world. Lecturers, teachers are also from all over the world. And so in reality, even though it is an American-accredited university, it is, in a sense, a global university as well. So going to the pros of studying at the University of the People. The first is that it is tuition-free. Well, I should probably explain what tuition-free in this context means. It means that you don't pay the typical tuition that you would have paid in an American university. Instead, what they charge at the University of the People is what they've called assessment fees. Okay, and so for postgraduate courses, you're paying above $200. For undergraduate courses, I think you're paying about $100 and something. The point is that you still get to pay fees, but the fees are not as high as what you would have paid in a typical American university. For their MBA, for instance, you would end up paying more than $2,000 for the complete program. And for the MEd, that's the Masters of Education in Advanced Teaching, you would pay slightly more than $2,000 as well. For their undergraduate degrees, like the undergraduate degree in computer science, you pay close to $5,000. So you can check up their website to get the exact fees, but the point is that you still have to pay fees. It's just that they are not as high as what you would have paid in the typical American university. The second advantage of studying at the University of the People is that it is online. So what that means is you don't have to go for physical classes, and of course that implies that you can get the education from the convenience of your home. You can get it from whatever location you are in. And so from anywhere in the world, from Asia, from Africa, from Europe, from anywhere, you can get the advantage of an American-accredited degree. You can get that kind of learning from where you are. It means that you don't have to apply for visas, you don't have to think about stuff like that. You don't even have to leave the work that you're doing. You can still do it and continue with your work. I think that that's a very big advantage. Another advantage of studying at the University of the People is that it is accredited. It is accredited by the Distance Education and Accreditation Council, which is one of the accepted accreditation agencies in the US. It is actually listed by the US Department of Education as a valid accrediting agency. So what that means is that your degrees will be accredited. However, I should say that watch out for the cons, because I'm going to shed a little more light on that subject of accreditation. One other advantage to studying at the University of the People is that the instructors, the professors, are people who are very experienced and who are very qualified. You have most of them having PhDs, and they are people who are generally very accomplished. In fact, many of them are sourced from some of the other universities. They are volunteers who are from some of the renowned universities. What that means is you have access to high quality faculty and you are able to get their input on your work. Another advantage you should have in mind is that the University of the People is actually very thorough. I can say that from experience. You have assignments every week. You have to post discussions, you have to submit assignments, you have to write papers, and these things can be very time consuming. They can require a lot of effort. You truly have to know what you are doing. It is very intensive. I should mention that because if you're thinking that it's just some diploma meal where you can sign up to and obtain a degree without putting in any effort, that is simply not true. For some of the courses, you have to read pages and pages of content, and it can be very, very intensive. The last advantage that I would like to talk about is their partnerships. They have partnerships with some of the very well-established universities and bodies around the world. With these partnerships, their degrees can have better acceptance, and if you get to do any of their courses, you may be able to progress into one of those other universities. I should mention though that you might want to read about the partnerships. Don't assume, because from what I've seen online, it is not exactly automatic. So I've told you the pros. Now let me tell you the cons. What are the things that you should watch out for? What are the possible disadvantages of studying at the University of the People? Well, the first I'd like to talk about is their accreditation. Yes, I told you that it is accredited by the DEAC, and I told you that the DEAC is a valid accreditation body. But I should mention that in the US, there are actually two types of accreditation. There's what is known as national accreditation, and there's the one that is known as regional accreditation. Many of the popular schools have what is known as regional accreditation. And so what that implies is that the schools that are really accepted are the ones that are regionally accredited. As a matter of fact, most of the popular schools will not accept a diploma or a degree or credits from a nationally accredited school. So I think that that is a very important factor. That is something that you should bear in mind if you're planning to study at the University of the People. You need to be sure that you would end up with a qualification that you can use, because for some people it's never going to make any difference, especially if you're studying from outside of the US and you do not need credits from, or you do not need to maybe progress to a regionally accredited US school. It might not make a difference in such a case, but for many other people it might matter. So consider that before you enroll. You can read up some more about regional and national accreditation. That said, I should mention that the University of the People has kickstarted its own process of getting regional accreditation, although they have not provided information about how soon we can expect for them to have it. We don't know anything about that yet. It's just good to mention that they've started the process. Another disadvantage I should talk about is that The courses are not really taught in that sense of teaching. There are no instructors. You have access to the e-learning portal. They make use of Moodle, which is an app, an open source app that you can use for e-learning. And they make use of Moodle. You sign into it, you access your course content, you see what you need to read, you participate in the discussions, you submit your assignments, and that's basically it. There are no lectures in the actual sense of sitting down, listening to a professor or watching a professor deliver lectures. You don't have that at the University of the People. For some people, again, that might not really matter. If you're self-motivated, if you're ready to read up content on your own, it might not really matter. If you're not self-motivated, or if you need to be taught, then the University of the People might not be for you. Another con is that even though, like I said, they charge modest fees, those fees can be high for people who are not based in the United States. If you have to pay $5,000 for a degree, for instance, it is very small in the US. You would pay multiples of that in a traditional university. But in Nigeria, for instance, that is still very high, because $5,000 right now would be about 2.5 million naira. And I'm sure that most people will not be able to afford that. So it's good to put that in perspective. Even the seemingly modest fees can be high by the standards of a number of countries. One other con that you need to bear in mind is that one of the evaluation systems is peer grading. Peer grading essentially implies that students grade one another for the papers that are submitted. There's the reflections that are submitted to the instructor and all of that, but there is a lot of peer grading. And the truth is that peer grading can lead to very unfair assessments. So you might want to bear that in mind. The peer grading thing might simply not work for you. I should say though that you have the option to appeal the grading. You can write to the professor, and in many cases the professor is going to intervene and get the issues solved if they are presented properly. One other con that I should mention is that you are learning online, and I know that that is obvious, but for some people that might be a disadvantage, because it means that you don't have physical interaction with other people. It means that you don't get to travel for your graduation, you don't get to go to a particular place to pick up your certificate, you don't get to snap pictures that show you in your school. Well, those might look like minor things, but I'm very sure that that is a huge part of the educational package for many people. What that also implies is you don't get to engage in extracurricular activities. There are no sports, no college sports, no competitions, nothing like that. You're just studying online with people that you probably have never seen and may never meet. So that's it. If you love education that is flexible, that is affordable, or at least relatively affordable compared to other schools in the US, you can do it at your convenience, it is thorough, and all of that, then the University of the People might be for you. However, if the issue of regional accreditation is a consideration for you, or if you don't like the disadvantages of online learning, maybe you want the physical interaction and stuff like that, then I would recommend that you try a different option. For me, the University of the People is a good option out there. I have not been paid for this in any way. I am just giving you an honest, personal opinion. And one more thing, if you're unable to afford the fees, you just might be able to get a scholarship, because they have a good number of scholarship schemes for people who are unable to pay. So that is it. Make sure that you click on that subscribe button so that you can get more and more and more of my content. Like I said, I post on education, I post content that is relevant to students. relevant to educators, relevant to entrepreneurs, and relevant to you out there. So if you want to grow, if you want to be inspired, if you want to be enlightened, you need to subscribe to my channel. Click on that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, leave a like. Do have a beautiful day and see you in my very next video.